Hello, we're here for another episode of Coffee and Code. This is our eighth episode, and what we're going to cover today, which we had Gabriel Michaud on a few episodes back talking about kind of his best practices and how he keeps sharp as a developer and gives some advice from his perspective. And we're going to return to the topic again, and I've asked Robert Waite, who happened to be our Developer of the Year, to weigh in on some techniques that he uses. And I hope this will be kind of like a part two, another really good episode that developers can take some advice and maybe apply to your lives, and not only to make you a better developer, but it can be really applied to any kind of learning that you want to do, whether it's a developer language or a speaking language or anything else you care to learn. I think the application you're going to talk about, Robert, you can put anything you want in there, and with the algorithms, it'll help you learn a lot better than you would just on your own necessarily.
Mm-hmm. And it's a habit that has changed my career in the last 4 years. So I've been able to go a lot farther in my career having had this habit and honing this skill. So I guess I could present my screen here, and I got a little bit of an outline. All right, let me know if you can see my screen. So
yes.
Before we get into the tool itself, I just want to go over a couple things that some services out there that I turn to really help hone my development skill beyond Acumatica. So like there's a huge prerequisite of knowledge that you have to have C# wise to stay on top of things. And my two go-tos are Pluralsight and Udemy. So virtually like any topic that you would want to learn, generally you just punch in a search here. I'm a big PowerShell buff, so I do a lot of PowerShell sessions on Pluralsight or Udemy, and it's just a wonderful resource to get some video tutorials and using it as a study guide. The other service is Udemy, which you buy these courses more a la carte. They do have like a business plan where you get a good chunk of their material, but most of it's a la carte. You never want to spend these full prices, $139, $84, $85 there. These things are always on sale. You always want to wait for it on sale. If you spend more than $13 to $16 for a course, you're spending too much. So one of the things that I like to do with this, like when we get into the Anki application, is I'll spend like an evening on my tablet and just watch some of these courses. And I got a screenshot application that will take screenshots, and I have them automatically load up to a Dropbox folder, and then I have a PowerShell script that pulls them into the Anki program itself. Does anybody else have any services that they like to use to just stay on top of things, other than Acumatica University's an obvious one for all of us, but just general coding knowledge?
There's actually some good YouTube stuff up there too, if you want the interactive, kind of sit back and watch it. Mm-hmm. I've enjoyed Gavin Lawn, who's out of the UK, does a pretty good series on C#. If you guys want to pick that up. He actually goes through a whole MVC application creation, which is kind of nice, even though when he starts getting into elements of it, like razor pages and stuff, it kind of goes sideways for us. But it's still applicable, and he's very thorough. In fact, he's almost annoyingly thorough the way he does stuff.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, YouTube. I'd say YouTube is a good source too. But Udemy and Pluralsight's been around forever. So
yeah, excellent service.
Yeah,
and Pluralsight has the testing as well, so you could kind of get a sense of how you stack up relative to your peers as well. What was the last name of Gavin?
Lon, Lon. It's Gavin
Lon.
Lon Digital, I think, is what his channel is called. Gavin Lon Digital. There's a couple of others up there that don't come straight to mind, but there's a lot of junk up there too. So, and a lot of it's one-on-one stuff, and it's just like, are you kidding me? So,
yeah, one of my favorites is Mosh Hamadami. He's got an excellent way of just really breaking things down, and he's.
I actually like him too. Yeah.
Mosh Hamadami's one of my favorites. I got a couple favorites, but Mosh is definitely up there. So,
Robert,
by the way,
with,
on your screen grabbing, which are you just using the Windows snippet tool or
Snagit?
You're using Snagit, the newer one. The newer one.
Yeah. I'm always up to date with Snagit.
Have you guys? Are you familiar with Snagit? Are you familiar with the Zoom It tool?
Negative.
Mark Rustinkowski created it like 19 billion years ago as part of his sysinternals tool set. It's called Zoom It. Look it up. It allows you to draw red, boxes and things like that on your page before you snag it. So, and it allows you to annotate what it is you're about to snag. So you can put arrows on it or squigglies under it. Or
I do the same thing with one called Light Shot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's just that Zoom It came from a Microsoft dude. So Mark Rustinkowski is still there. He's, I think, like a big hunch on the Azure team now. But anyways,
well, Robert, I'm really interested in the different areas that you go to look in to get more information. But you were talking about where are places that we go to kind of stay up on what's happening and get some of our educational material. And, I'm going to fall back to two of the staples. One of them's relatively new, but in Stack Overflow, of course, we all go there to ask questions. But I like to go through Stack Overflow and not just look at the things that people are asking questions per se, but look to see what the answers are. Because there's a lot of things that everyone else out there does and they have questions about. And a lot of the things that I've learned over the last few years have literally come from looking to see how a lot of you folks and a lot of other folks that may be watching the session here, what their answers have been on Stack Overflow. And then more recently, the Acumatica community, there's been a discussion board that's been opened up there. And I see a lot of how do we use the system type of things in there, but I'm also seeing a good bit of developer type questions in there as well. And so those are two good sources within the existing framework of our Acumatica community that have really, really brought me a lot of value in just getting up to speed on context-sensitive information specific to Acumatica.
Mm-hmm. Especially reading your answers that each of your answers tend to be a blog post. But yeah, I agree. I carve out time every day to make sure that I hit any new Stack Overflow questions, and regardless of it being answered, I still read through it and I try to process and understand what it is and what the answer is.
Well, a little insight to the reason those answers look like blog posts is because in a lot of cases when I'm answering a question, I actually have to go do some research and I have to do some development, some testing, and I have to learn something myself to be able to answer the question. It's just my experiences that put me in a position that I have an idea what they're asking for, and so I'll go test it, and I want to feed back. It may sound a little selfish, but I put those blog posts there because I need that information when I can't remember 6 months down the road. Hey, I know somebody asked that. I know I helped them with that, but I don't remember what the details were. And so simply answering those questions in detail, again, have been a great way for me to be able to refer back. But some of the tools that I hear you're going to talk about today sound like they're going to be additional great ways to keep up with that information.
Yeah. And in terms of learning too, like one of the most powerful techniques to learn is to actually teach it. And answering Stack Overflow questions is a form of that. And when you get to the point, you might understand it and be able to answer it, but there's a big difference between understanding it and being able to articulate your answer. When you're forced to articulate that answer, you're gonna learn it at a deeper level. So one of the things that I wanted before we get, go ahead.
Sorry. From this standpoint, I can say that this is joke, but I believe it may have some salt of truth in that. Like when our brain works in two different modes. When we learn something, it works in a way like we consume something. But when we explain something, this is like we cook. So this is not like eating, but cooking. And it gives totally another approach how our brain works, and it makes us better developers.
Yeah.
It's like writing a paper. Yeah, my mom taught me this. You have to read it out loud, and you'll be surprised how many words are not in there that you think you actually vocalize in your head when you're reading it versus saying it. Mm-hmm. It's two different parts of the brain, so it's very important. Yes.
Hey, Stephen, that's what Acumator is for.
No, my mom used to have my papers up for breakfast in the morning. She was an English major, and she had redlined everything, on my papers. And I'm like, oh, great! And I'm gonna eat my oatmeal and look at this,
So would I, if I redline any email you sent to me, would it bring nightmares to you? Be traumatic?
No, it'd be fond memories.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you can use Zoom it to do that too.
All right, so before we get into the Anki tool, I wanted to go over this course. I'm a big fan of the great courses. They're now called Wondrium, or however you pronounce that. But they have this course here called the Learning Brain, and it gets into the real deal science behind learning and what's effective and what's not. And just having the knowledge of how to learn is extremely powerful in terms of development, because you being able to get in and independently go out and teach yourself something, it's a big deal, and that's what really brings good developers outside of the peers. Like, if you don't need to hold a developer's hand and they're able to learn something. So this course gets into a lot of the stuff like pitfalls and effective ways of learning, how to learn quickly, and those sorts of things. Absolutely wonderful course. These guys have like a subscription plan for like $120, and you get like all sorts of whatever you're interested in. That they'll have a topic on it. I've been doing stuff with these guys for at least a good 20 years now, back when they still had VHS cassettes that they were selling. But wonderful course. I highly recommend this because it gets down and it really pulls out like the details of how to learn. Another is a good book that I absolutely love, which is Ultra Learning, Master Hard Skills and Outsmart the Competition and Accelerate Your Career. Same sort of thing, just lots of information in there in terms of like how to learn and how to learn fast. All right, so now we get into the Anki tool itself. So Anki's got a desktop application to it. It has an Android application. It has an Apple application. It's also got a web application. So there's several different ways that you can use it. And it's pretty simple. You just go into your decks. I'm gonna put a demo. And add a card. What is 1, 2 plus 2? Just an example of doing a quick card. So there's a couple different types. We want basic type for this year, and that just kind of gives you a forward and back. We also have a basic and reverse. So if you can do the same answer in reverse, like if you're doing like synonyms or something like that, that comes in handy. And then I didn't mean to put that in. So you can see I have a lot of other topics as well that I have in there. So one of the things that course that I showed you gets into is proven the most effective way of learning is doing active recall. So schools, they test you all the time, but the test isn't only there to essentially grade your performance. The test in of itself is a learning material. You don't know the answer, you're given a question, and you need to formulate the answer at the end. And this is one of the primary key concepts behind Anki or any similar type applications. The next concept is spaced repetition and how your knowledge always atrophies. So you could learn something today, and generally a year from now, you're not going to be as sharp with it because your knowledge is going to atrophy. But it has been scientifically proven that when you learn something in subsequent iterations, you'll relearn it a lot quicker, and it will last a lot longer than your previous time. And then generally you go through a couple iterations, a few iterations, and if your cards are set up right, you'll retain the information indefinitely. And that's ultimately what the goal is you learn something, you want to retain it. You use an application like Anki to keep sharp on it, because at one point you're going to lose the information, and then Anki is designed to bring this into focus at the point of forgetting it, and then it kind of resets itself, and you relearn it, and you learn it stronger than you did before. Anki's a super popular application for med students in particular, or just any sort of group of people that need to retain a large volume of information. So there's a lot of YouTube stuff out there in terms of medical students using it to get through their med school and their programs that they have. Developers also use it. So I actually learned about this through let me get rid of this ad here. All right, so this guy here, he's a programming YouTuber. He's just another one, somebody like Mosh Hamadami and the guy that Stephen had recommended. He's a polyglot. He knows all sorts of different computer languages and whatnot. And he did this session on how he learns. And this is how I got introduced to Anki around July of 2018, because that's when it aired. And I've been doing it pretty much ever since. So this is a good introduction to Anki itself. And another great resource in terms of learning Anki is this guy. He calls himself the On King. He gets into various different facets of Anki and the more advanced portions of things. He's a med student. I'm pretty sure he's done with med school at this point, but he's got a plethora of videos out there to help you get up to speed with Anki. All right, so one of the things, so let me just show you a quick so this is just like general stuff. I'm actually moving to the Denver area, so this is just like a random sample. I'm moving to the Denver area. I want to get to know what the area is. So I do these image occlusion things to get to know the area there. There's stuff. So that's kind of like an example of image occlusion. Kaizen is an agile type. There's an enumeration behind it. I've got that memorized. You'll see diagrams like this. I'll do image occlusion to kind of hide that away. That's field. That is field defaulting. And those sorts of things. So I have a lot of questions like that use image occlusion, but that's what your morning would kind of, or whatever time you practice Anki. That's kind of how it would look.
So you basically build your own, like your small tests to be able to study and remember things that you want to be proficient on.
That's precisely it. If there's something that you want to learn and you want to have it in your memory, you do that. And actually, it's more so for you memorizing stuff. It's not, you don't want to use it as a tool to learn it. You want to learn it first, then create the cards. So when we get into like these 20 rules of formulating knowledge, it will that's part of it, is to essentially learn first. And that's like one of the first stuff. So this is an excellent article. If you do get into Anki, I would highly recommend doing that. It's actually for a product called Super Memo. It's actually almost the same thing as Anki itself, but nonetheless, all of the concepts still apply.
So Robert, I have a question for you. So in terms of time investment, right? From your perspective, obviously you're a proponent of this. So the investment and time you put in it pays dividends. But can you talk a little bit about the investment of time to be able to create these decks and what the turnaround is like for you? Because I'm sure people think about, well, what's the investment? Do I have the time to actually do all this? Yeah. It sounds great, but what's it like to actually do it, and is it worth it? Obviously, you believe it is, or you wouldn't be talking about it or doing it.
And that's an aspect that I wanted to discuss as well. Generally, it's a tedious process. It is. Try to carve out time to do this. I generally spend at least an hour and a half every single day, including weekends and holidays. Sometimes up to 2 to 3 hours on it. And I hands down feel that it's done wonders for my career. Just being able to have this knowledge at my fingertips, and it's not just development stuff that I put in there. I like putting vocabulary words in there. I'm a big vocabulary buff. I do my best to not engage in lexicophonism, which is just using bombastic language that nobody understands. You just don't want to do that. But it's actually wonderful just knowing what words mean when you see them and recognize them. So I do a lot of that stuff too. You saw my example. I'm learning geography as well. I'm moving to the Denver area. I want to know what that area is, so I want to learn it. And I haven't even been there yet, and I already know like the neighboring towns and everything.
Hey, Robert,
so,
you talk about
yes.
the investment. It's tedious to create these, but is this something that, as you create it, you can share? So perhaps maybe you have some slide decks, or perhaps you could pull some samples that you could share to help someone like me get started. And then also, if just because it takes a lot of time to create it initially, it seems like that would be the reward would be multiplied greatly if you're sharing that with your team. So, in my case, it's a very, very, very small development team, but I could see easily if I'm trying to train another developer how to do some of the things that I'm doing, if I were creating these slide decks to help me remember the things I don't necessarily do every day, it would be something that would be monumentally valuable for a new developer to go through my slide decks. So
yes.
is it easy to be able to share those types of slide decks?
Yes, you can export decks. You can also share decks online and be able to download them. I actually did start out by using some precompiled decks for like regular expressions, Python stuff that I wanted to learn, and various things. The most valuable cards that you're going to have, though, are the ones that you build yourself, because you're generally building your own knowledge, and you want to use your own personal experience to build it. When we get into some of these latter things in here, we want to provide like personal experience as well in terms of these cards. But in terms of like, if you have some fundamental knowledge that you want to share with team members, there's nothing stopping you from being able to export that. I believe Troy asked that question before as well. I mean, I have a rather large, and it can be a whole lot more organized as well. But I got all of these decks in here for all of the stuff.
So Robert, are you using this application as sort of a capturing technology? Because for me, I use something like Evernote. I just have a notebook in Evernote, and anytime I find a pattern that I'm sure to use, eventually one other time I'll grab it and take a snippet of it and keep it there so that it's searchable. It's not necessarily something that may be worth memorizing, but knowing that you have a system for capturing that information. Are you using this as a capture as well?
I don't use it as a capture. Generally, what I do if I want to study it, I use Evernote. No, I'm a big Evernote fan, so I use that as well. I use hyperlinks and whatnot for it. And then I also use an application called Todoist. So if there's a topic that I want to learn, I will capture the web page of, or whatever the source is that I want to learn, and put it into Todoist. Sometimes what I'll do as well is I'll build an outline within this. Like, say you're studying something Acumatica side, and it's got a particular section in the help. So I'll kind of build like an outline of cards and just add the link in there, and it'll be kind of a placeholder for studying the information, not necessarily memorizing stuff. So,
one of the questions I was going to ask you is do you have any tips on making it not such a time-consuming process? But I guess to piggyback on what Yuri was saying, is I tried to build a deck, and in the process of building the deck, it's like I was kind of doing the exercise and I was cooking the knowledge as I was building the deck, because it really is time-consuming.
It is, but the dividends are huge.
Well, I think one of the things that I really like about this approach as well is, the fact is, as you mentioned earlier, the way our working memory manifests itself is use it or lose it, just like exercise, right? And so what you want to do, I think the value that I see beside the investment is the ability to review the information, right? So that you keep it, right? What is the stuff that you really value that you don't want to lose and relearn? You could come back to these cards and, it'll, because of the way the algorithm works, you go and you practice those particular skills, through the cards, right? So they keep coming up, and then it reinforces that memory that you're about to lose.
And that's a big point too, because with the algorithm, the spaced repetition algorithm that Anki uses, you're actually minimizing the amount of time to memorize something. It just works that way. I generally throw a large volume of stuff into Anki because I just believe in it. But if you don't want to spend an hour, 2 hours a day on it, you would just have a smaller sample size. You would just do whatever is manageable for you. It's generally the stuff that you believe that if you memorize it, it's going to enhance your career in some way, or your personal life in some way. Because I just throw everything in there. Like, as you can see, like I got geography of the Denver area in there. I have hobbies in there, IoT stuff in there. I even have a way of putting dance figures. I'm a big partner dancer, and like I've actually studied dance routines using it. So there was a 2019 competition that we did, and we had this whole like long routine that we did, and I used Anki to actually get that solid in my mind. So it's just, you want to use it for the stuff that you just want to know inside and out. That's where you want to use it, and it's really up to you as to how much time you put into it. You'll get what you'll get out of it what you put into it. You'll actually
Robert, after 3.5 years, I've been doing this for about 3.5 years, and so I'm amazed at how often I still find myself getting tripped up on the basics. And I'll go back and look at all the training guides. So I've got the old copies of the much earlier training guides that we don't even have those sessions anymore. But I'll look at the really old ones. I'll look at the current set, and I'll go look and see if there's been an updated one. I think there was an updated one for 2021 or one recently released. But I find myself constantly, even after 3.5 years, I don't use the stat syntax all the time, but I remember it was somewhere, and goodness, it's in the T whatever class. So I could really see something like this being something very valuable. Hey, Mark, you think we could get the training group to actually create decks like this to complement each of the training guides, so that as we do that, we can go back and follow these decks? Because I think something like that could be a super valuable tool, not just for folks like me that struggle to remember those basics that, I went through the training material a couple times, more than a couple, but I just don't remember them today. So to have those things that are always right there that we need to remember, I remember all the little, after every section, there's a few questions, and I'm thinking, hey, that looks just like something that you would put in one of these slide decks. And then I remember one of my iterations through the training materials thinking, man, I really wish they'd put some of the information about this that I've learned since then, but I guess they can't put it all in there. And so things like that would be great supplemental things for the advanced learning, so you could be exposed to them and have the opportunity to go explore a little bit deeper. But I'm getting a little bit excited about this tool.
Yeah, I hope so. That's what my intention is, to get you guys excited about it. One of the places where it really shines too is like in everyday development, you get stuck on something. You're just like, I'm stuck on this, and you ask around and you're banging your head for like an hour or so, and then you finally get it and you figure out what it was, and it was like some one line of code or something like that. Generally, those are the areas where you want to build a card for it, because like chances are, like when you need it again a year from now, you probably won't remember it. But if you build a card for it and you put it through the system, there's a better chance that you're going to be able to recall it easier.
Yeah, I'd like to add something to what Brian's mentioned with tying it back to the Acumatica certification. As you know, we got to renew every 2 years the certification. And going to the documentation again, when you're kind of knee deep in projects where you weren't when you first joined, it's such a time consuming process now. These cards would be quite handy to kind of do a refresher on a course and then quickly take those exams and get through it a little bit more efficiently. Yep. So yeah, I would definitely see it as an advantage here.
And what the beautiful thing is, like when these cards start getting sent out like 6 to 12 months ahead, generally the only thing that lands back into your active pile is the stuff that you need a refresher for. The stuff that you know and that you're able to answer after a year of not answering it, you just know it. You don't have to spend any more time on it. So you're more so spending time on the stuff that you do need more time to absorb. So one of the things I wanted to go through is this document here, which is just a handful of rules to, I would say they're not really rules, they're guidelines. There's some cases where I break them purposely with good reason. The first two are more or less kind of similar. Do not learn if you do not understand, and learn before you memorize. If you just throw and build cards without really understanding what the material is, you're going to spend a lot longer trying to memorize that material. It becomes a lot easier when you truly understand the material and how the pieces all fit together. It's just an exercise to just challenge you to stay super sharp with it. One is build on the basics. Start with your fundamentals, like a good place to start. Like I'm thinking maybe as like a blog article for 2022, I might come up with like a deck of fundamentals, Acumatica fundamentals. So like I'm actually starting to flag cards as I see them. Hey, this would be a great fundamentals card that I can share with others. So it's just, don't start with the advanced stuff. Start with the basic stuff. And
Robert, can I interrupt you for a second? When we talk about learning before memorization, if you took something, for example, like sign language, you wanted to learn sign language. If you had a deck of cards that you were just looking at the answers, because, you know, just to flip through what a sign equates to one by one, couldn't you use that as a learning tool and then turn it into front and back at another point? Or are you suggesting that this isn't really a good learning tool at all?
You can. I actually break that rule sometimes. And generally it's when learning like a new topic, or like I have like, for example, like test SDK stuff. I might actually start out by just building a deck of the just the table of contents, and just have a link at the bottom or a link on the other side that brings me to the reference material. And that's more or less, it's not something for me to actually memorize. It's just a placeholder. Hey, there's a bunch of information in this chapter that I haven't processed through yet. I don't understand it. And then it just becomes part of my morning routine to go through cards that I mark for extra study, and then I study those cards from there. Generally, at the end of the day, those cards disappear, the placeholder cards, and they're replaced with more quality cards. When we get into the subject of image occlusion or closed deletions as well, generally that's a really nice way to build cards up quickly and efficiently. But generally, the more verbose the image or closed deletion is, the harder it is to retain. So I generally take something that seems to be hard to retain and just refine the card a little bit so that I can remember a bit better. Closed deletions, you probably don't know what that is. It's fill in the blank. We've all been to school and you've had questions like fill in the blank. Who was the or blank president was president during the Civil War or something like that. That's what a closed deletion is. So you can take a chunk of text, paste it in, and I'll show you an example of that. Let's do that now. So for a closed deletion type, you're going to change it to close here. We'll say graph is common. So, something like that. And you would build the close by saying, hey, I want to remember that word there. I also want to remember this here. But I also want to have this BLC part of this second one there. So I'm going to change that to a 2 there. So what happens now when I save this card, we get 2 cards now at this point. One we're expected to recall the word graph, and the second is to recall business logic controllers or BLC. And then just hit add, and then you have a new card from there. So that's a closed deletion. So I wanted to make sure that I explained that because I just used that term.
Can you actually show that card in operation so you can see
me,
how it actually looks?
Yeah, I don't know how it got into other here.
Because that was really cool. I can see that that's a really nice way to build some cards.
Okay, so there's our 2 cards. I'll do a study now. So right now you get the 3 dots in there. So all you need to do is just build a line of text, and then you have that. And then the second part, as you can see, being that we marked both of them as a 2, we're expected to know business logic controller and BLC. So you build cards like that. Okay, you get these metrics down here at the bottom. That means like we have 0 new cards, we have 2 that are in learning, and then the green is review. So there's a lot of stuff to know there, but you don't need it to really start out. I don't want to overcomplicate this. Sure. Or try to keep the concepts as clear as possible. Okay, so we discussed building upon the basics. Stick to the minimum information principle. Okay, so this is important. So one example they have is like, okay, what are the characteristics of the Dead Sea? And you have all of this stuff here to remember. It's just cumbersome, and you're just going to have a hard time memorizing that whole thing. So they split them down into more distinct questions themselves. And generally, the more you break it down, the more valuable the card is going to be, and the odds are better that you're going to retain the knowledge. So they took all of this information here and just kind of split it down there. So I'll generally start, and this is kind of like my strategy too. Like I'll kind of break this up front. I just want to get the material into Anki as quickly as possible. I'll do like either closed deletion or image occlusion. I'll get into image occlusion as the same thing as closed deletions, but with an image. And then from there, I'll generally refine the cards to be better to adhere to these principles. We discussed closed deletions. That's just a super quick and easy way to get information into Anki quickly and effectively. And you also want to use imagery. So as the adage goes, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And generally, I find cards that have an image, even if it has nothing, if it's not even like related to. I do these daily vocabulary words from this place called the Grandiloquent Word, and they'll have like a little picture of something, and very often I'll be able to recall it immediately just because it has a picture in it. So generally, if you're able to get imagery into your questions or answers, that's gonna help you out big time. Using mnemonic techniques, so you could either make your own, or if you're studying something like I'm into aviation. I'm a big aviation buff, so they have all sorts of mnemonics out there that you use. You want to remember things via those mnemonics. Development has lots of mnemonics as well, like the ACID acronym and so forth. Graphic deletions. This is also called image occlusion. This is one of my favorite ways to really build knowledge. And sometimes what I'll do is a wiki. If I'll actually take a screenshot of text, actually, because I'd rather look at an image of the way that, like, especially if there's like formatting or like captions, images, and so forth. Go back to, that's a general idea. So I'll show you a quick example of how that is done. Let's do this. Let's grab into brain anatomy, grab this image. So I'll do a screenshot of that. But generally, this will be a development topic of some sort. And I'll show you how easy it is to create these cards. So I'm just going to hit add. And then I'll hit this here. Center it, and then all I have to do is just draw a box on all of these here.
So I've noticed there's a lot of limitations to the web version of Anki that I haven't seen before because I haven't downloaded the Windows app.
I don't actually use the web app. I generally just use the desktop and the Anki, not Anki, the Android version. But there it is. There's a couple different options. I could hide one and guess one, which means like only one of these will be closed when I'm reviewing it. But sometimes you want to have it hide all, guess one, where you get like one that's marked red, but you don't want to show the others because it'll give you a clue as to what it is. But in this particular case, I just do hide one, guess one, and Bob's your uncle. You have all of those cards now that you can work through. See where let's go. So that's image occlusion, and that example that you saw in terms of the Denver map and one of the towns hidden, that's exactly image occlusion, and that's actually one of the add-ons that you use. Super powerful. That's probably how most of my cards get started, because I like to actually just get an image of the text area or a chunk of code, because the image will kind of show you the formatting and whatnot. You could definitely cut the text and paste it in, but it just doesn't look pretty. I like to do them through image occlusion a lot. This is avoiding sets. So here you have this question here, and you have this long, super long list of things to memorize. What they recommend is breaking them down as much as you can, very similar to the minimum information principle that we had before. And I'll often use these for like enumerations for like certain fields or like and whatnot. Generally, I'll start by doing like something where I'm remembering a small set, and then once I'm comfortable with it, I'll actually then learn the whole enumeration or set verbatim. Numerations are similar to sets. It's preferable over sets. The general difference is that an enumeration is ordered in some way. So it could be like alphabetical order of such and such, whatever it is you're learning. This example, they use the ABCs. Obviously, everybody knows the ABCs, but they would suggest breaking out like a 26 question or 26 item thing into breaking it down. And that's kind of how I did my Anki for like my dance routine. Like I had the before and after part of it. And I just needed to remember what the middle part was. And that's kind of what they're showing here. So it gets difficult, like if you're trying to like memorize like a poem or something like that, and this gets into some strategies for doing just that. You get a little bit of context as to the cue as to what goes over it, and then you got to memorize this section here thereafter if you were looking to memorize that speech. So combat interference, that's pretty much where like you get two things for different contexts. So one of them would be like the acronym AI. So I'm an aviation buff, so AI in aviation means attitude indicator, but if you're a computer software guy, you'll probably think it means artificial intelligence. So that's kind of an example of interference. To combat that, you're going to add context to your cards to give you a clue as to where it is. Optimizing wording, fewer words generally that's needed to get to that point where the light bulb goes off in your head as to what it is. The better. The longer and more verbose the question, it's going to take longer to process. This is a powerful one here. Refer to other memories. So it's one of the things I was talking about before, like one of the great places to build cards is when you're stuck on something and you figure it out in an hour or two. Next time around, you don't want to be stuck on it, so you want to remember it. You can tag that memory. It's like, oh, I was working on such and such a client, and you can add that as context to your questions. Similar to that is to provide personal examples. So if you have a memory or something personal that will help you remember what it is, you just add it in, and that gives you a better chance of memorizing the detail, and you're going to spend less time working on that stuff. Emotional states, that's a huge one too. It kind of goes hand in hand with the previous couple as well. Generally, if there's like an emotion attached to it, you're gonna remember it better. Very much like how flashbulb memories type work. Like everybody knows where they were when September 11 happened. So that was a very emotional thing. You're going to remember it. But if you're able to add emotion or some sort of memory of emotion to the cards, that helps you. Context is huge as well. So generally, a lot of my cards get intermingled, as you saw. Like I have geography mixed in with vocabulary, mixed in with development, mixed in with Acumatica stuff, giving some sort of context cue in there. So this is a little bit verbose here, but if you had like a little code for biochem and just the GRE, that's a more concise question that provides context there. Redundancy does not contradict the minimum information principle. Generally, this rule or guideline is if you're able to memorize something from several different angles, the better. One example is like I actually use Anki to kind of help speed up my typing skills. I got a photograph of my keyboard and I do image occlusion on all of the keys, and I gotta recall exactly what key is under that image occlusion. I'll also ask questions like, where is the asterisk? And I gotta say middle finger to 2 keys up. So or I would have the question, okay, what's the key that's middle right finger, 2 keys up? You have 3 questions that are the same answer or the same thing that you're really learning, but you're really learning it more deeply by that. And that's just something that's kind of helped speed up my typing. So like I'm at ease with knowing exactly where the keys are and how my fingers need to be to activate those keys. Providing sources is good. So I'll generally like try to add a link to the PDF with a page number attached to it in terms of the answer side in case I need to reference it a little bit better. And just knowing where that information comes from. Date stamping is very important for volatile information. So this will be information that kind of changes. So I like to know people's names. So like I'll take like a company org chart and I'll do image occlusion on it, and I'll memorize the names of people on there. But organizations change, and you get a new org chart the next year. I'll timestamp. I'll actually put an annotation on the card for when the card was created. Then I get a sense this is old. I just need to purge it out. Prioritize. I'm not sure how to discuss this one there. So all right, so I'm not going to discuss that one.
Well, let me ask you a question that might tease that out a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're learning and when you're creating these cards, are you able to tag to say this information is more important, so you prioritize it? I noticed that was one. So does Anki give you the ability to mark certain cards as like high value versus others?
Yes. And I actually have my own strategy to do specifically that. So when you answer cards, you could answer it either you don't know it, which is again, let's go to one of these here. All right, so I haven't decorated this card as of yet, but when you go to answer it, you have again hard, good, and easy. So generally, the stuff that's less important to me, I use the easy button for that there, and I actually have a PowerShell script that goes and it tags that card. I don't want to spend as much time on that card as I do other cards. So in this, those all land within this deck here, and I'm just a little more passive in terms of how I look at those. I just give it a glance, and I just leave it at that. For the stuff that's in this here, those are things I have to know. If I don't know it, I'm going to hit the again button. And so that's generally how I rank stuff. Other people will do it different ways. So on each of these cards, you can set a tag. You generate tags, and that's just like a general. So you could code cards in a certain way by using these tags. You also can coordinate them and put them into decks. That's a way to organize them. And then you also, where is it? Let me find.
So is the tag a way in which it categorizes cards, so you can go to that tag and practice those particular cards? How does tags actually work?
So yeah, let me show you that in a second. So we also have the ability to flag cards here. These are a quick and easy way to flag stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So generally I use the blue flag for like reference material, and what I've been using the red flag of late is to flag good Acumatica candidate cards to share with the community. So I've been tagging them that way to get them out. So you have this browse feature thereafter where you can get in and view all of these tags. So these are all tags that you can filter down and just go directly to. Should have a flag. All right, so yeah, that's generally how tags work. So you could just select any one of these, and it will pull up all of those cards, and you can browse through the cards through this browser thing based on that tag. So tags are pretty useful for classifying stuff. And generally, like if you know you're out of practice and you say, hey, I want to get in and do all of my I-300 stuff, you can actually get in there, open a
pre-built decks for training courses.
Yeah, well, I really wish these were in better shape. I would share them if they were, but I want to get a good quality set together for you guys for an example, and I'll follow up with examples. Let's go back to my notes and see if there's anything else in there. Stand-up notes. Okay. Okay, so we discussed closed deletions. That's just fill in the blanks. Easy to set up. Image occlusion is the same exact thing, but you're looking at an image. Oh, my favorite add-ons. Okay, so Anki Connect. This is a super useful tool because you know how I was explaining, like if I hit easy, I'm just throwing that into a passive deck where I'm really not spending too much time on those types of cards, because it's I just need to thin out like how active I am with stuff. This is the tool that I use to do that. So I got some PowerShell scripts that actually engage this plugin through REST, and it'll go look to see how I last answered the card and automatically tag and flag it so that it'll fall into the decks that I want them to fall into. Image occlusion isn't part of the standard application that is an enhancement if you want to get into the doing images and doing stuff like that brain anatomy thing that we just did. I like to use screenshot apps to get images. Like I like to do my Pluralsight and Udemy courses on my tablet. I'll use a screen capture utility that automatically sends stuff up into Dropbox, and then have it automatically load into Anki. And then from there, I refine the cards as need be. So I wanted to discuss these two charts as well, because it kind of goes into learning and mastering stuff. So the Dunning-Kruger Effect is essentially two scientists that proved that generally, if you think that you know it all, you don't, and it's the ones that think they don't know it all are generally the ones that know more than anybody else. And they have this this curve here with competence on one axis and confidence on the other. So generally, we climb up this peak here when we're doing our tutorials. We finished our tutorials and we just think, hey, we're just masters now at this point. Then you get a little bit past this and you realize, oh, there's so much more to learn still. So your confidence drops. They call this the valley of despair down here. And generally, everybody's got experience feeling this at one point. And then once you get past that, it's like a never-ending climb up there. They have this plateau of sustainability in this diagram, but in development, there's no such thing. It's just a curve that goes on forever and ever, never-ending learning curve, pretty much. And then they have this graph as well, which is, there's a book out there called Tiny Habits and Habits in General. Generally, what you're going to experience doing Anki is it's not going to seem like it does a lot up front. It's generally when you've put the time in over a sustained period of time where things just start to accumulate and you get a compound growth of stuff there. So you feel it at one point where just like terms just come to mind a whole lot quicker and easier. And so I just wanted to share those two graphs with you. And I think that's all I had to discuss in terms of this tool set. Is there anything else that you guys would like to see? Or
so one thing I was thinking about that's kind of burning in my mind throughout your presentation, because I use Duolingo to learn French, for instance, right? Which I've talked to different people about, that I've struggled over the years, and I really like the application because it uses many of these same principles and you know, uses learning science, if you will, and brain science to do. And one of the great things that happens to me that I like about it is, you know, I get into the habit. I spend 2 or 3 hours a day on it for a while, and then I have like a load of stuff, and it becomes less of a priority because, you know, I need to focus on my work and I have lots of things and it piles up. Like, you know, the 2 busiest times for me are when we have, you know, Summit, which is coming up. So like right now, I don't have time to really study. But what I like about the application is I can go back and you know, I've gone through X number of units of learning, and over time, the little medallions will break up. And I know that if I click on that, because it means that my knowledge is going stale because I haven't practiced it. Yeah. And if I don't click on it, and then it will, what's nice is I'll be able to identify areas that if I want to not lose knowledge, I need to do these. And so instead of spending an hour, I spend 10 minutes, 15 minutes a day or less, just going to those areas that the application's telling me, hey, if you don't do this exercise, you're going to lose it. So it keeps me. So does Anki have anything like that? Will it surface knowledge that's going stale and you're in danger of losing it? Because that would be a good feature to add if they don't, because I really love that aspect, right? Because what's more frustrating, it's like diet, right? And exercise, it's really frustrating. You get really fit and then you stop exercising and you gain the weight again, right? It's the same thing with knowledge, right? If you stop, you're going to lose it, and then just frustrating because, God, I spent all that time and now I got to restudy this, right?
Yeah.
So
generally when the card comes in for review, so when it becomes due, that's generally the time where it's saying, hey, you're on the verge of potentially losing this, unless it's like stuff that's new when you actually understand it deeply. But generally, that's where that comes in is the review process. The hard part about doing a discipline like this is it really needs to be extremely consistent, as consistent as you could possibly have. Generally, the times where it goes to the wayside is like summit events, hackathon. I don't have time. I don't have time to do any of this. So at the end of hackathon, like my decks is just they're just completely piled at that point, and it's quite a while to get through it. So there are tools that they're add-on tools. I haven't used them as of yet, but they kind of actually allow you to take, say, if you've had a lapse for like a week and you haven't been active on it, it will redistribute the cards so that it's more manageable, so it's not all done at the same time. But the general rule of thumb in terms of doing a discipline like this is you got to do it consistently.
Right.
Like and I would recommend just starting out small. Do 15 minutes a day. Like I've been doing it for a long time. Like I'm pretty sold on it. I think this is going to bring my career to like just wonderful places. I just spend the time doing it because I'm convinced that it's what is going to set me apart from other developers that don't do it.
Yep. Yeah, it's just like anything else. If you're an athlete, it's just, it's the person who works in silence and just keeps working and working. Yeah, people that are talented, that, it's like the old Aesop's fable of the tortoise and the hare, right? It's slow and consistent wins the race, right? You can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't apply it, you're not going to win.
That's right. Yeah.
So
that's it.
Thank you, Robert.
You're most welcome. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, I really appreciate you spending the time to put all this together and explain how you use it and give examples and everything else. It was very useful. Before we close out, did any of the remaining people on the line here have any other questions or comments?
Super short version. How do you get started?
Download the app. Create a login, download the application, and start plugging it in.
Is there a cost to it?
No. I believe the Apple application, there's like a nominal cost to it, almost nothing though. Everything else is free. There's no cost. And I have like a ridiculously my instance is huge. Like if I were to download it on a fresh instance, it takes several hours for it to like pull everything down.
Wow.
And I haven't had anybody give me a hard time about the volume of cards that I have. Because when you sync it, it syncs up to the web. And then you're able to sync it to other devices by doing so.
Yep. So would you say 99% of the time you're creating your own decks, or do you find it useful to grab other people's that have been shared?
I would highly recommend just building your own decks. So when I first started out, there was a few decks that I downloaded on regular expressions, Python. I had a big interest in Python. But the most valuable cards that I have in my deck are the ones that I created myself. So it's really what you find, what you believe is valuable. Those are the things that you should be putting in there.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Robert. It was very helpful.
Awesome. Yep. I'm glad I could help.
Yeah. All right. Well, there's another coffee and code in the books. Thank you, Robert. And I appreciate everyone hanging on for an hour and 18 minutes. I'll edit this down a bit. Not much, though, because I think I only took maybe 3 or 4 minutes in the beginning, and then we were off and running. So, again, appreciate it. I think this is really valuable. I think it's really nice to have this session really complements, I think, the session we had earlier with Gabriel about kind of his best practices, because this gets more into, I think, the intellectual aspect of learning and techniques and science around and be able to build some habits about, acquiring and keeping knowledge. And, like you said, that curve of sustainability is like an asymptote that keeps climbing. It doesn't end, right?
It doesn't end. Not in
anyone in a technical field, there's always progress and change. And so how do you stay, how do you ride that wave and keep on top of it so you don't get buried, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, all right, guys. Thanks a lot.
Guys.
Have a good rest of your week. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.